So I think we talked about it in the past. I've come from, I guess, a long line of entrepreneurs. My dad, he owns Little Caesars franchises growing up. So I like to joke around that I probably started working in his stores by the time I could reach over the counter. Definitely broke some wage and hour laws. I don't know about it then, but I do know about it now. So I've had some talks with him about that. I think he owes me some back wages. But yeah, so I grew up in that and everyone pitched in all the time. I think anyone who grows up in kind of that environment understands what that is as a family where everyone's pitching in the family business. So that kind of drove me interest in business. And then as I got older, I ended up living in Korea for a few years, taught some English, studied Korean. When I got back, I was at the University of Utah and I had the opportunity to start a restaurant of my own with my sister. So we did that for a few years. I actually ended up dropping out of college for it for a minute. And then the recession hit and I thought, well, we can stay here. I wanted to franchise and we had opportunities to franchise in Canada and everything like that. And then the recession hit and thought I could sit here in the store and sweat away working. I had two restaurants at the time, or I can focus on getting back, finish the last semester and a half of school, whatever I had left, and then go to law school and do what I wanted to do originally. So I ended up doing that. We ended up selling the restaurants, moved back to Southern California and went to law school in LA. I started law school at 30. So I was kind of an older, and my son was, I think, 3 or 4 at the time when I started. So it was an interesting way to go to law school. Graduated in 2016. And then I kind of had a weird route to where I'm now. I started as a business legal affairs at a telehealth company for a minute. So when I was there, I got a lot of experience in HIPAA and high tech compliance and telehealth and telemedicine. And then I started consulting in that to help like small dentist clinics to get compliant that way. Like I got familiar with compliance and government programs, state rules and regulations surrounding privacy and data and things like that. Then I moved in. I worked at USC Keck Medical as a contract attorney, reviewing all and negotiating all the contracts coming in for procurement and sourcing. And then from there, I worked a little bit in private practice, doing some employment law. So that was kind of my first foray into EPLI, some wage and hour cases. And then I started working at Alliance. And I started out as corporate counsel there, I think first, and then I got promoted to general counsel and CLO. That was an abatement company, and we were in California and Arizona, like 4 or 5 different other states. That was where I really got in there. It had been purchased by a PE firm, and we did a reorg, a riff, and that was where I guess I loved my CEO from there, Kelly Cams. She's great. I had a great relationship with her, and I guess she saw potential in me to do some other things. Either that or she was really sadistic and thought it would be really funny to give me more work. But I remember coming in one day, she's like, we were going to have HR report to you. And I thought, okay. I had contracts and compliance and M&A and a few other things that were their departments that were reporting. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. And at the time, I didn't understand what HR was. I thought, oh, well, how hard can that be? Just onboarding, off nations, filling out EDD paperwork, payroll. It was running reports. I didn't understand the scope of HR until I got in there. And at the time, I think we had terminated the director and basically everybody except for I had one HR generalist left and then had to rebuild the HR department. And because of that, I had to get really involved in the blocking and tackling and the everyday HR. But I just wasn't all that familiar with and didn't have an appreciation for. I kind of was like most executives where it's a nebulous thing. I think it sometimes feels like legal does too. So it's familiar in that way where it feels like it's a barrier to some goals for some C-suite people. I think they have this idea that, well, HR is a department to know, or legal is a department to know. Our cause, you're like, we want to do this, and HR says we can, or we want to fire this person. HR said, well, we can't fire them, or we can't do it this way. I had a little bit of that opinion. I just didn't understand. So when I got involved in it, I realized that HR touches pretty much everything in operations, the executive level at Alliance to our crews at the building sites, just everybody, like every technician, all the way up to dealing with benefits for C-suite people. So it really opened my eyes. And that was a thing too, was like, I didn't realize you had benefits in there and then managing the onboarding and offboarding process. Sounds easy. It sounds like, oh, you're just putting information on, start getting somebody's credentials and whatever. But I mean, it's really organizing between all the departments and saying, hey, IT, I need to get this. I need to get their laptop. I need to get their badge. I need to get this. Going to whoever their direct report is and making sure that they understand what the start date is, that they're ready to go, that they're all these things. And then not to mention all the people come in all hours of the day. We've had people come in at PAFCO where I'm at now. It was a similar situation. When I got hired, I mentioned that I had HR report to me, but that wasn't part of the job description at the beginning. And then my first day, they were kind of like, are you ready to meet your team? And I was like, oh, I have a team. And they're like, oh, the HR is reporting to you. I was like, oh, okay. I know what that's like. I've done that before. And we're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, holiday, everything. So I'm like, we'll have people come in talking to day and night with complaints or personal situations or issues with whatever the job is. And you realize that it not only are you doing all these functions of, hey, you got to do investigations, you got to do the onboarding, offboarding, benefits, you've got to explain things. You've got to do a marketing team in some ways because you're marketing your benefits, you're marketing all these things, you're trying to recruit, you're trying to convert temp employees to possible employees. You're trying to do all these things. And then you get people saying, hey, this happened, or workers' comp that incident happened. I got hurt this way. And then you got to do an investigation on that. It's just so broad. And that's the thing is it's emotionally and intellectually can be very tiring too. So I gained a deep, deep appreciation for what HR is and how much it touches. So yeah, that was like drinking from a fire hose. That's what it was like learning the ins and outs of HR and what the scope really was and opened my eyes. And then I became an advocate for it, even in the C suite where I'd be in meetings or in a boardroom. And same thing, everyone, they'd start down something that's like, I just don't understand, or what are they actually doing? And I'm like, well, let me tell you what they're actually doing. I love those questions cause you get it from a CEO or somebody that's kind of like, well, what are they really doing? I'm like, they're therapists, they're admin. I mean, what aren't they doing? I guess you're not doing accounting, but they're having to run reports and payroll and work with accounting very closely. All of it, it touches everything. So yeah, I think it's a little bit misunderstood department. It's an underappreciated department, I think for sure. I think the people who work in HR, they definitely deserve a lot more appreciation, but we're going to change that slowly.